Thank you. There was a quote by Billie Holiday, and this kind of summarizes how what I've learned about myself, like growing up as a young person, but also in the past year, having like a gap year and then going back into education. Well, Billie Holiday said, if I'm going to sing like someone else, then I don't need to sing at all. So if I'm gonna talk like someone else, then I don't need to talk at all. I spent so long trying to sing a hopeless song and hum along to an offbeat tune. I stuttered and stumbled over my own words, trying to persuade a crowd that I was talking sense. I tried to say the words that they taught me, but I was regurgitating information, lies that I couldn't hold down, still trying to find my own sound. I thought I was supposed to sound like change, but when I cleared my throat to speak, it sounded like gunfire, like the clack of a gun. So I held my hands up in surrender to my own power. I found words to express the thoughts suppressed from years oppressed, and I opened my mouth and said, Black Lives Matter. In a moment of weakness, I released sounds of praise that sounded like my grandmother's laughter. I learned to say words that my father never knew and explained to my mother that my voice could never be my own with the name that she gave me branded on it. I realized that I had diamonds sparkling and resonating inside. I used my teeth as pickaxes to mine deep in the cave of my chest, and I found just a lump of coal. So I used my tongue to refine that carbon ore, my lips to polish the rough edges, and people were in awe by the time I opened my mouth to speak, and they heard my voice emerge a diamond. So now, as I open my mouth to speak, know that those words are non-renewable. So pay attention. Thank you. The piece that I wrote for today is just called My Thoughts When I'm Unsure. And it's just about me thinking where the future's gonna take us and the new developments in technology. And it's just crazy. So this is my thoughts when I'm unsure. And I'm accompanied by Sam today, thank you. If I had a limp, would you think I was less of a human being than someone who walked and barely tripped or stumbled? And if I had one leg, would you watch what you said and bury your thoughts deep down so that anything potentially hurtful that you thought wouldn't trip or stumble out of your mouth? When materialism rules the world, no one has time to chase dreams because they're too busy chasing the gold coin on the end of the string being tugged away from them every time they edge closer. Too busy chasing the ever-changing face of technology, not realizing that they're no longer spending and wasting money, they're wasting and losing time. I know so little about this great big world in which we live. And in these times of unprecedented change where the questions raised for society are so many, it's confusing knowing where I'm from and trying to belong in a space that could never sustain me. But we always find ways to overcome. We recreate our biggest fears into our superpowers. So we recreated our own image into a better one, chose nurture over nature, and decided that artificial intelligence would be our savior. And if beauty is in the eye of the beholder and society is viewed at the perspective of the individual, in my eyes, I am ahead of my time. I've lived longer than the digits on my ID. Yeah, I look younger than the digits on my ID. And to society, I'm worth less than the cost of my degree. We need to liberate education. Break down the walls of a classroom to prove that the sky is the limit. And undo financial ties so we can afford to live our lives. But I'm uncertain. Still unsure what would happen if it were all to change. And it might be my responsibility to be the change that affects my community. But we all just sit there, sinking into the backs of our sofas like lost change falling out of our pockets. Change that could have been invested into better days. But we are so afraid of armies of robots and nuclear wars, the threat that the future has to not being distributed equally. But maybe artificial intelligence will fix our flaws, solve the system crashes where we forgot I love yous, and debug our hard drives so we remember the good times before social media became our warmest embrace, and Facebook was the only way that we celebrated birthdays. I feel if I was able to download my prayers as emails, translate my love from X's and O's into ones and zeros, if I could manage my humanity and use it more efficiently, we could find the answers to questions we never felt to solve. But we chose technological advances resulting in an emotional decline. But we know so little about this great big world in which we live. And in these times of unprecedented change where the questions raised for society are so many, I try to remember all that is spiritual, physical, emotional, all that makes us truly individual. Thank you. So the last piece that I'm going to do, I wrote this quite a while ago, like when I was finishing college, but it's still it means a lot to me about where I see my future going. And it's called Infinity. Often I try to count down from infinity, but logically I can't calculate whether the time ahead of me is bright. In a perfect scenario, I'd just hope to find the light at the end of my struggle, to funnel out all ambiguous ideas about who I'm supposed to be. But with the state of the world now, I'd be happy to retreat to the comfort of my past, relive the familiarity of church hats, Saturday soup, and prayers that last longer than 24 hours would allow. But our lives are governed by three hands in an omnious cycle. Mystic beings that speak in monotonous echoes that don't ring out for too long. I find myself transfixed by these time constraints. Why were we given so long to contemplate our time here and sift through existence for an answer? I got here quickly by speeding towards a deadline, but I don't want that eerie beep of a flat line to be the means of my ends. I'm not afraid of death, but just existing to the point of taking that last breath and adding up all my regrets to equal whether I lived a whole number or just a fraction of what I could have been. Is that moment where I'm submerged into the ground with 6 feet pinning me down the moment that I work towards? My grandparents' future was boiled down in a Dutch pot with a good supply of good food and hard food and food for thought and food that keeps me full even till now. And it was dished out generously to poor souls who needed more than just change to pay for their days. But I find myself budgeting breaths that I have enough left to reach heaven. I find myself shuffling past daydreamers with their hands open, trying to catch a blessing, and I'm guessing what the untold story is written behind the shade of blue in their eyes. I refuse to have my regrets left engraved in my gravestone. But I aspire to have my dreams hard-pressed into diamonds because they were the master plan of my ancestors, crafted from the residue of sea salt dried on cheeks, like tears and seeds scattered on concrete, like the snow that doesn't fall on my island. I've got all their history on my shoulders. I'm just trying to fill the footprints of giants, overcome mountains and trip over them like they're pebble stones. I'm still trying to count down from infinity. And as infinity looms over, threatening to erase the stamp of scars decorated around my knees and elbows, the familiar faces whose names escape me, I'm trying to stay above the wave of PIN codes and personal statements, ID cards and licenses, and the threat that the future poses to my plans. It's easier to limit possibilities and live by practicalities. But I don't want to live by practicalities. I want to start from one and see which infinity I get up to. Thank you.